In its Tibetan form, the Buddhism of the Great Vehicle, Mahayana, is called Lamaism by outsiders and Tantric Buddhism by the Tibetans themselves. To those who aspire to wisdom, it offers all known forms of ascetic life and all the possible techniques of self-transformation that exist. This Tibetan Buddhism presents itself as a pyramid whose base is monastic life common to all forms of Buddhism, whose summit is meditation without form, in which is revealed the unity of all things, the impermanence of every element in the universe, in which only the Absolute is eternal. Between this starting point, common to all those who have heard the call, and the perfection that is reserved only for the chosen few, stands the structure of tantrism that is so disconcerting for outsiders with its pantheon of divinities in terrifying forms, its sexual symbolism, and, in addition, its yogic practices. These monks, confessing to transgressions of the rules, are members of one of the orders called Red Hats, among whom one can find the largest number of both hermits and, on the other hand, married monks. The monks devote themselves to studying metaphysics, sometimes for years. This path can be compared to that of monks anywhere, but the exchange of ideas concerning the noble questions takes on a typically Tibetan form. These animated competitions, these duels, these tournaments, one could say these matches, are the living memory of the heroic epoch in which the Buddhists, trained in Indian Tantrism, had to confront the supporters of Bonpu, the ancient Indian cult, and Chinese Buddhism from which then emerged, and even Islam or Nestorian Christianity. Those debates were veritable battles. Sometimes they were competitions for miraculous powers. Today, these controversies between the one and the multiple, the noumenon and the phenomenon, or between time and eternity, are a particularly favored teaching method in the monasteries of the Yellow Hat Reformed Church. Imagine we are in Europe, and that these men are students at a teacher's training college discussing Hegel's dialectic, or even Trappist monks inquiring into the dogmas and mysteries of the faith. Each examiner strives to disconcert his opponent, making him lose his concentration by clapping his hands and shouting. This fairground or battlefield situation gives rise to ample opportunities for diversion. The infant monks also practice in the same way, whether tulkus, incarnate lamas, meaning children who have been recognized as a new manifestation of a master or deceased sage, or simply ordinary monks. If monasteries of 1,000 or even several thousand monks were not uncommon in Tibet, today in India, or more precisely, on the Indian slopes of the Himalayas, the exiled monks and lamas have been reduced to setting up makeshift monasteries. For example, Dukpa Tuksi Rinpoche, Guru, that is to say, master of the Red Hat order called Kagyupa, endeavors to educate and provide for a handful of monks without any material resources, who are destined to continue the long lineage of yogis, disciples of the great ascetic Milarepa. The study of the scriptures, of the doctrine, of the theoretical knowledge of wisdom, is the preferred approach of the yellow hats, who often practice it for years and years before engaging in more practical techniques of ascetic life. This academic approach to knowledge is not, however, unknown to the red hats. The ritual objects being placed before the oldest lamas denotes that the text being read is a tantra, hence the word tantrism. These tantras are esoteric books composed of both metaphysical treatises and manuals concerning ascetic techniques. Only after receiving the initiation of a particular tantra, and after hearing it read aloud by his master, is a disciple allowed to begin his personal study of it in solitude. These tantras, symbols of the fundamental forces that go to make up a human being and the universe as a whole, are of different tantric deities, visualized by lamas during their meditations. These tantric divinities or deities play a fundamental role in the Tibetan's form of meditation, especially in a highly significant form of meditation ritual, that of the Mandala. In the winter fog, 4 lamas are working together, setting up what is in fact a very simplified mandala of the kingdom where the principal deity of their order resides, E Vajra. The construction of a mandala is already a ritual in itself. These monks are working without notes or models to refer to. They work together in harmony at a shared task that is already a way of broadening one's limited individual consciousness. Nothing is left to chance in the way that the lines and spaces are arranged around the central point, which represents the whole, the totality. The building of a mandala, even a simple one like this, takes a minimum of 2 whole days. 2 days for which the monks have prepared themselves by lengthy fasts and prayers. Meanwhile, life in the monastery continues with work, study, and daily offerings, activities which, in monasteries the world over, punctuate the hours in the monk's daily life. Once the outlines are completed, the lamas add the colors to the mandala, putting the powders of the 5 symbolic colors on the appropriate sectors: green, yellow, blue, red, and white. 5 colors, 5 directions: north, south, east, west, and center. This division into 5 can be found everywhere. 5 Dhyani Buddhas, each one being an aspect of the Absolute or Supreme Buddha. 5 subtle energy centers in the human body. But there is also a 6th point situated above the mandala that is out of space and time, and is what Christians call everlasting life. These faithful people are searching for this everlasting life, although they are not fully aware of it. They make the ritual tour of the temple and turn the wheels containing holy scriptures in memory of the wheel of Dharma. The practice of Mandala meditation is considered to be a way towards reaching one's Buddha nature, for its geographical and spatial symbolism has, above all, a dynamic quality, which leads the person who lives this experience from the periphery towards the center, from multiplicity towards unity, and at the same time, from illusion and death towards reality and life. For the mandala, a visual symbol is a concrete support for meditation. It is, above all, a plan or a map of a deity's domain, a place in the center of which his palace or temple and his throne can be found. Considering that Tibetans are by no means polytheistic, each deity, emerging from and returning to emptiness, is itself the door towards knowledge of the one reality. Once the mandala is finished, it is set up inside the temple, and there, the meditation, which is purely an inner ritual of prodigious intensity, will be performed. Each participant will experience the liturgy of the mandala and, through the acuteness of his attention, will take the inner path that leads from the dark exterior world to the light of the kingdom, and to that darkness which is even beyond light, that of the uncreated. For the center of the mandala is the Alpha and the Omega, the chaos from which the world emerged and where time comes to its completion. It is the center of the universe, and also the center of every man. It is the kingdom of heaven that is within us, within you. Then, once the ritual is over, the mandala is taken apart in the same way that every created thing is continually undone. The powders are taken in procession to a mountain torrent. There they are thrown in the water where they dissolve. In the same way, every element in every created thing is continually being dissolved. Mandalas painted on cloth and then conserved are rare, and one wonders for how much longer there will still be monks capable of producing such complex esoteric works. 2,000 kilometers away, in the Dalai Lama's monastery in Dharamsala, a much more elaborate mandala was set up for the annual ritual Kalachakra Puja, the ceremony of the Wheel of Time. After the prayers, invocations, and purifications, the monks consecrate the place where the ritual will be held, and where each person will visualize and experience the inner mandala. In a monastery in Tibet, this mandala would have been set up in the center of the temple, and the ritual performed on each of the four sides, facing all four directions. But these refugee monks from the Patala itself in Lhasa have to content themselves with the cramped conditions that compel them to place the mandala against one of the walls, and the consecration of the four regions will have to be performed on the same spot. This preparation is at one and the same time a decision to perform the ritual, a prayer to obtain the location, an exorcism forbidding the spirits and evil forces of the psychic or subtle sphere to contaminate this place that is solely reserved for spiritual practice, and lastly, a consecration, a seal set in the chosen place. This ritual is performed with the two instruments that all Tantric lamas use: the dorje, the scepter held in the right hand, masculine symbol of activity and power, and the bell, passive feminine symbol of knowledge, of wisdom. To to distinguish between wisdom and action, and then to unify the two, is the very foundation of Tibetan Buddhism. I have been told by Tibetan and European experts that these pictures are unique, and we are here in that secret heart of hearts of the Tibetan tradition. The true mandala is not one that can be seen with the physical eyes, but one that can only be visualized inwardly. The execution of Tibetan rituals often takes several days, demanding many hours of daily presence in the temple. This is why food and tea are distributed amongst the rows of monks. Tibetan tea is made with butter and salt, and a cup gives as much energy as a full meal. As the meditation progresses, it becomes more and more subtle and purified. The ancient science of visualization of a tantric deity, with its symbolic attributes, is very far from our mental structures. However, its theory and practice have been confirmed by the discoveries of modern research in depth psychology. It is a technique of self-knowledge and of the reintegration of the forces that are active in our subconscious. It is, above all, a direct support in the search for liberation, nirvana. Other tantric rituals take on the form of a drama, experienced intensely by those who take part. But all these rituals, as disconcerting as they may sometimes appear, aim to lead to the liberation from all attachment, which is the raison d'être of Buddhism, whether the rites are simply for the participants themselves, or to liberate an unhappy evil spirit, a soul from purgatory. If it is a ritual intended to separate mercilessly the forces of death from the forces of life, the setting has to be appropriately terrible to suit the real psychic surgery that will take place. There are three actors to this drama. Firstly, the victim, the symbol of this attachment to the ego, which blinds us to our eternal reality. Secondly, rising over the remains of the beast in us, the great destructor, Mahakala, he who destroys what must, in any case, be destroyed. Mahakala, the terrible, the beloved, he who calls us to awareness. Mahakala, who devours and consumes, who kills to give life beyond birth and beyond death. Lastly, there is the officiating Tantric Lama, Khyentse Rinpoche, considered in India today as one of the greatest sages of the Red Hat Order. Identified with Mahakala, Khyentse Rinpoche is about to celebrate a series of rituals, including yagna, or the sacrifice of burnt offerings, and the ritual murder of 3 effigies. His weapons are the mantra, sound or invocation, and the mudra, a movement not only of the hands, but of his entire being, the repercussions of which are felt well beyond the physical and bodily plane. Then comes the time when the unhappy spirit is summoned to take its place inside the statue itself. And the pieces of the dismembered corpse are offered as food to Mahakala. Khyentse Rinpoche then goes to the opposite side of the temple, where a straw dwelling which has been built to receive another effigy is ready to be set alight. And Mahakala, changed into a weapon of ultimate terror, is hurled into the blazing house. The mortal remains of the spirit are finally given a symbolic burial. His tomb is sealed with the brass plate that had contained the icon of Mahakala. Khyentse Rinpoche then celebrates a ritual that is common to both Hindus and Buddhists, yagna, the sacrifice of burnt offerings. For the monks, it is not a matter of attending the sacrifice, but of taking part in it. The fire is the mouth through which the Absolute devours everything that it, itself, cast out of itself. It devours multiplicity and division in order to bring back every created thing to the unity that is beyond space and time. Oh, fire, consume illusion, untruth, egoism, ignorance. Consume suffering, consume death, and give us awakening through the knowledge of that which we really are. In Dukpa Tupse Rinpoche's monastery, the same ritual of Hom is celebrated, this time by yogi monks of the Kagyupa order.
Mandala dikadam da sanji dikadam chi dikadam da gudin dikadam ke ba ribazam da shen chakharda jabanganda lagi de bachidai samata
The ritual of Chöd, which is celebrated by Tibetan and Bhutanese monks in the monastery of Mindoling, is most moving. It is each one's offering of his own body to all beings in forgiveness for all his misdeeds. This statuette is the image of our own body, created to be a temple, but which our selfishness has made a prison, isolating us inside of ourselves and preventing us from gaining access to the infinite and to the universal. A piece of this sacrificed body is given to the guru, the master, for him to eat. Tibetan lamas are well known for their sacred dances, dances which have gradually disappeared from most of the other religions. But these Tibetan dances could not be compared to the Muslim dervish dances, for example. They are not daily or weekly physical exercises destined to produce a reorganization of psychological functioning and to gain access to a higher state of consciousness. These dances are always elements of a ritual, conceived as a liturgy rather than as a drama. It is with this in view that the monks discipline themselves under the supervision of their master, just as actors or dancers would rehearse. In the monastery of the great yogi and Tibetan abbot Gyalwa Karmapa at Rumtek in Sikkim, the annual dances last 2 days. On the first day, that could be considered as an ultimate rehearsal, they are performed without the symbolic masks and costumes characteristic of these lamas' dances. After the 4 guardians of the gateways of the universal Mandala have intervened, everyone in the audience is able to recognize those who, the following day, will be wearing the costumes and the black, wide-brimmed headdresses of the Tantric officiators. Then, those who will be wearing the masks of Mahakala and his followers. And at the end of the day, the monks consecrate the area with their dance figures by drawing the sign of the Dorje, symbol of the active force, united indissolubly to perfect wisdom. The following morning, everything is ready for the most spectacular ritual in the life of the monastery. An icon of Mahakala, the destructor, an effigy in which will reside the spirit to be freed from itself, the audience, and His Holiness the Karmapa, abbot of the monastery and head of the Karma Kagyu order. The dignitary officiating consecrates the statue of Mahakala by asking the deity to be truly present in the image that represents him, and to perform the ritual himself through the Tantric Lama who will carry out the proceedings. The spirit, the soul from purgatory, is summoned to take its place in the effigy. Then skeletons come to remind one of the inevitability of death, and, through their presence, question everyone as to the real meaning of this death. four keepers of the four gateways protect the threshold of the sacred mystery of the new birth that follows a consciously accepted death. All these masks are symbols. Far from being gross superstition, on the contrary, they point towards a spiritual science and knowledge of psychology which is highly evolved. With various symbolic instruments, ropes, handcuffs, and different weapons, the officiator gradually prepares the spirit for the moment of death. It is tempting to wonder whether the corrida, bullfighting, is not the vestige of a ritual that was once sacred, when one considers the movements with the cape, the lances, the banderillas, and culminating with the muleta. The moment for the ritual murder has arrived. The celebrants' associates, in their ceremonial costumes, come into the arena for the death blow. And Mahakala arrives suddenly in the form of a masked dancer accompanied by servants. Mahakala himself will give the coup de grâce to the evil entity, followed in this act by all his acolytes. At the end of all these ritual dances, a deer always appears to cut up the corpse and distribute the remains. But no Tibetan would claim that these tantric rituals are the ultimate objective of the Lama's spirituality. In the hermitages in the Himalayan jungles, masters and disciples take up a harsher ascetic life of yoga, in what is considered to be a more advanced stage on the path. This elderly man, centered within a tranquil inner strength, is Bhutanese and has spent most of his life in Tibet itself. Those around him are wearing the Bhutanese national costume and have all come to honor a stupa under construction. But this man is not simply a serene old man. He is, above all, a yogi, a very great yogi, Lopon Sonam Zangpo. There are only 3 young people who, having successfully passed all the severe tests imposed on them, have been chosen to become disciples and allowed to receive their initiation from him. Initiation, in other words, the beginning, admission to the path, and also ordination, the essential transmission of a spiritual influence, of a force the disciple will bring into play by means of all the exercises and techniques of the yogic discipline, bringing to maturity the seed that has been sown inside him. It is certain that the guru, the master, is the one who guides, encourages, and teaches. But he is, above all, the one who gives birth to a new life, who brings into the world a world that is not of this world. It is out of time, blessed, limitless, made of stillness that is more active than any movement, made of silence that is more vibrant than any words. At the other end of the Himalayas, Abo Rinpoche is at present the most revered of all the Tibetan yogis who have succeeded in escaping their country to take refuge in India. He has forgotten his age, which is guessed to be about 90, and has arrived at the highest summit to which yoga can lead. He also is a truly qualified master who can lead a disciple all the way to the end of his journey, to the other bank of the ocean of sorrow. But he too, as all other true yogis, restricts his teachings to the initiated only. Tibetan yoga has taken on a form that is quite different from Hindu yoga, whose postures and elementary breathing exercises are popularized today in bookshop window displays everywhere. However, amateurs must be warned that the Tibetan's yoga is far from being put up for sale on the worldwide market of Orientalist fashion and spiritual gimmicks. You may only see certain exercises that are amongst the most simple and the first to be taught. And yet, only a few years ago, in Tibet itself, nobody, not even a monk who is not a yogi, would have been allowed to have a glimpse of these movements and postures that were kept in absolute secrecy, and anyone trying to watch them in secret would have been severely punished. All physical yoga is based on a paradox: to transcend the mortal body, to go beyond the limitations of that body, by devoting to that very same body one's attention and efforts. For yoga is one aspect of tantrism, and according to tantrism, nothing, absolutely nothing, must be refused, denied, or repressed. Everything must be accepted, integrated, and transformed, like nature changes coal into diamonds, like the alchemists speak of changing lead into gold. As great as he may be, Abo Rinpoche adopts the most humble of attitudes before the Tulku Lama, Kamtrul Rinpoche, who is recognized from childhood to be the incarnate Lama and presides over the destinies of his order. As secret as the science of yoga is kept, however heroic the yogi's asceticism, as extraordinary and even miraculous as the results may be, these yogis are sages who stay in perfect harmony with what ordinary everyday life entails for every man. These two yogis, one from Ladakh and one from Bhutan, whose vision is beyond the veil of appearances, know above all things that they are one. They are playing their part perfectly, spontaneously, freely. They are completely aware of the present moment and are overflowing with serenity, joy, kindness, and compassion. For they are free from any trace of the past, whether conscious or subconscious, and they are also free from the slightest preoccupation with the future. This magnificent dorje that is carefully protected in an antique silk drape has been held in Milarepa's own hands, the founder of the Order of Yogis. This is why it is handled with such respect and brought up to the forehead as a sign of veneration. This dorje is the emblem of supreme power, power which, for Tibetan sages, is always related to compassion. Not love that is founded on emotional impulse, capable of becoming its opposite and giving birth to selfishness, jealousy, hatred, and despair. No. Love that takes root in the realization of the unity of all beings. Having died completely the death of his own egoism and of the belief in his individuality separate from others, the yogi can say, "Because I no longer am, I am everybody, I am everything." To those who thirst to know, the Master answers. Little by little, he reveals the secrets of the teachings. How to meditate. Where should the eyes be focused during meditation? The Tibetans do not meditate with their eyes closed but open, sometimes focused on the tip of the nose. The body must be completely relaxed and immobile in a posture that can be maintained without difficulty for several hours. Some tantric meditations are based on visualizations, visions for which no drug, no magic mushrooms are necessary. These meditations last for several hours, or even several days. The yogis use a belt to support the body in a position that is sufficiently comfortable. Tibetan yogis distinguish 5 centers or wheels in the body. The root center, the center at the navel, the center at the heart, the center at the throat, and the center at the head, called the 1,000-petaled lotus. The yogis also describe the circulating currents of energy in the body. The 2 main currents flow alongside the spine, one ending at the left nostril and the other at the right nostril. The energy or prana that animates the whole universe enters the body through the air we breathe and circulates in these subtle energy channels, or nadis. This shows the importance of certain breathing exercises, particularly the watchful and conscious participation in this process of breathing that begins with the baby's first breath and ends with the dying person's last. This yogi asked me the question, "Do you know how to recognize a true master?" By the way he laughs, he answered himself, and effectively dissolved into laughter. The master, here Dukpa Tuksi Rinpoche, first teaches beginners to loosen the belt at the waist. Relaxing the belly is the foundation of the correct position. How would it be possible to position oneself within oneself if a tight, contracted attitude is maintained? Only the person who has discovered his center of gravity can exchange freely with the universe of which he is a part. The Tibetans locate this center of gravity in the region of the abdomen, reminiscent of the famous hara of the Japanese Buddhists. All the Tibetan Buddhist ascetic exercises, all the tantric rituals, all yoga practices find their meaning and their accomplishment in meditation. This meditation is forever changing as the disciple progresses and matures spiritually. The visualization of symbolic forms is gradually surpassed, and the ascetic rises to the plane of meditation without form, to the perception of emptiness, or shunyata, which is the key to Tibetan Buddhism. In India, amongst the refugees, as in Tibet itself around the big monasteries, small cells have been built, where a monk can go on retreat and live as a hermit for days, weeks, months, and sometimes even years. During this time, he sees no one and receives his food through a hatch. The monks meditate in these tiny cabins. Today, they have allowed us a glimpse of their world, a world of peace and inner vision. Some are still beginners, while others are advanced initiates. But all of them aspire to the same realization, that of becoming Buddhas themselves, not only for their own emancipation, but for the welfare of all beings.